Hello, everybody. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2023 Wells Fargo DFS Tactics Show. We have a lot to get into, a lot of chalk to navigate, a lot of pivots to figure out where we want to go, who we want to fade, and look at the weather forecast. So let's not waste any time. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from FantasyNational.com. It is simply the best tool out there. It's going to make you a much smarter gambler and a much better DFS player. Go check them out. It's simply well worth your investment. In the description of the video, there are links to all of my social media. This is Twitter and Instagram, where I posted some research earlier this week around the Wells Fargo, specifically at Quail Hollow. So if you would like to see my weekly research of the PGA golf tournament, then give me a follow over at Twitter and Instagram. Twitter is also where I post my daily 3 up, 3 down for baseball. 3 players that I think are going to provide their value in DFS, and 3 players that I don't. So if you are interested in quick hitting baseball content, give me a follow over at Twitter. The link to my Twitch channel is also below. That is where I do all of my in-depth research, much more laid-back stream, music going on in the background, but you have unfettered access to ask any question, look at any statistic, all of that stuff, give you a peek behind the curtain, if you will. So if you're interested in seeing the deep dive of the research, then give me a follow over at Twitch. Then my betting cards week after week will be posted on Twitter. That will be no different. That'll be out later this evening after the DFS Tactics Show. So if you want to see my betting card week after week, give me a follow over at Twitter. And then finally, we're live. Chat's open. I want to hear from you all. Who are you focusing on this week, either in wagers or in DFS at the Wells Fargo? What type of player do you think is going to succeed here? How much do you think prior course performance is a big deal or not at Quail Hollow? All of that good stuff. And of course, if you have any lineup questions, jump in chat. Would be happy to help you answer them. So let's figure out our strategies and our tactics for the 2023 Wells Fargo. And we're going to start, as we do every Wednesday evening, over at Windfinder to update the forecast. And as of right now, I do not see anything that would pertain to a favorable side of the draw. You see on Thursday here, perhaps a little bit more gusty winds in the morning, and then kind of dying down throughout the afternoon. And also Friday morning, a little bit more gusty in the morning, dying down in the afternoon. I do not know cardinality. Say on Friday afternoon, cardinal direction south to north, how that affects the course different than it will, say, west to east. But right now, I don't see a favorable half of the draw. This is just a week to play your guys that you think are best suited for Quail Hollow. So there's a look at the forecast. Nothing crazy to update. No wind really in the forecast. Maybe a little gusty in the afternoon, or excuse me, in the morning. And then Saturday does look like there could be some rain. Sorry, as I try to center that. Saturday looks like there could be some rain. Perhaps a little bit of delay. We'll see. So, with that, let's move on over to Fantasy National. And I have this set, as we've talked all week about how Quail Hollow is just a very, very difficult test of golf. It's a very long course. It always plays difficult. So your top players, when a round has been difficult since the start of 2021, Colin Morikawa, Rory, Jordan Spieth, Matt Fitzpatrick, Victor Hovland, Xander, Sungjae, Justin Thomas, Shane Lowry, and Max Homa. There's your top 10. Scroll down a little bit, let you see about the top 30 here to keep on going. We've got Patrick Cantlay, Tony Finau, Keegan Bradley, Corey Connors, Chris Kirk. That's the top 15, and you can see the rest of the top 30 or so. Win around has been difficult going back to the beginning of 2021. The other end of the spectrum, these players have not played well. Win around has been difficult, and only because I see his name, there's been one more field change. Ryan Brim has withdrawn. So Ryan Brim is not in the field this week. So if you did submit any lineups with Ryan Brim, go change those, check your lineups, make sure you do not have him in your lineups. He is withdrawn. But your worst performers when around has been difficult since the beginning of 2021. Nick Watney, Max McGreevy, J.B. Holmes, Nico Echeverria, Andrew Landry, Cameron Champ, Jim Herman, Henrik Norlander, Jason Duffner, Garrick Higo, Jimmy Walker, Rory Sabatini, Robbie Shelton, and on down the list there to about the bottom 30 or so in terms of poor performers when a round's been difficult. Not going to do long courses. We've looked at that all week. I think difficult is going to be the more appropriate filter, although both certainly have their merits, and I used both filters, difficult to par and long courses, in my mixed condition model. But in terms of a total performance, I think difficulty to par is going to be the more appropriate filter that you would want to look at if you want to look at just a total performance preview of the field. So with that, let's go ahead and move to the mixed condition model that I built for this week. And we talked all week how this is just a ball striking course. It is getting somewhat undermined, at least graphically, in Fantasy National by the fact that the winners tend to just make a whole lot of putts here. But this is a pretty big ball striking course. So I have 10% in off the tee and 15% in strokes gained approach. To be quite honest with you, I wanted to put 20% in here. I just kind of ran out of percent because I think there are going to be a few factors that we absolutely need to look at. And so I just ran out of percentage. So 15% strokes gained approach, 10% in off the tee, 10% in putting on fast Bermuda greens. And I talked Monday evening and a little bit on Sunday about how the GCSA tournament fact sheet has listed this as Poa Trivialis overseed. I believe that the Bermuda is dominant. So if Poa Trivialis is indeed where we should have gone, this is where my mixed condition model will be weak, will lose, is that I am focusing on fast Bermuda greens, not Poa Trivialis. So do make that note as we move throughout the evening. That will explain why one player in particular in my top 20 really rose, who might be a little bit surprising. But I'm focusing on fast Bermuda greens, specifically Bermuda. 15% in bogey avoidance when it's difficult. And I spent a lot of time talking about this Monday evening, how bogey avoidance is just a very, very big deal here at Quail Hollow. I always prefer to match a scoring metric or scoring statistic with a scoring filter. So that is what I've done here. 15% tied with strokes gained approach, and another statistic we'll talk about here in a second for the most important in my mixed condition model. Look, pars are good scores at Quail Hollow, generally speaking. So if you're able to avoid bogeys, you're going to be rising on the leaderboard. So 15% there. 5% in driving distance on long courses. And the reason why I used long courses for this metric is that everybody is going to have to hit driver. Sometimes players, and again, I'm just using names that come quickly to mind players like Kevin Kisner, Webb Simpson, Ches Reavie. Those players are hitting driver where some players will hit 3 woods just because of the difference in length. It does not matter here at Quail Hollow. Everybody is going to be hitting driver. So I want to focus on the players that have the length advantage in combination with just strokes gained off the tee in general. So 5% in driving distance on long courses, just emphasizing the distance, especially when you're forced to hit driver on these long courses. 15% in greens gained when it's difficult. Again, there's a merit to looking at this when or using the filter on long courses. We did that Monday evening. I just think the difficult to par filter is more appropriate for Quail Hollow. So 15% greens gained when it's difficult. If players are hitting the green this week, they're going to be very, very advantageous against their playing competitors, their peers. 5% in scrambling when it's difficult. I wanted to put more percentage in here. Again, I just kind of ran out of percent. Scrambling is going to be a big deal this week at Quail Hollow. This is the only around the green ish type metric that I have. So if around the green truly does matter, I'll be a little weak to that as well. But 5% scrambling gained when it's difficult. You see that I don't have anything with par 3s. Again, just speaking to the fact that I ran out of percent pretty quickly. Par 3s were pretty much the first cut in this mixed condition model. They have been mitigated in importance year after year at Quail Hollow. So no par 3s. If they end up being a little bit more important or have a factor into who wins this week, I'll be weak there. 5% in strokes gained par 4. So total par 4s. I only have 5% because I focused most of my attention in par 4s in the 450 to 500 range. We saw Monday in the Data Dive show when we went to Microsoft Excel that this range makes up a little bit more than half of the strokes gained total in terms of the par 4s at Quail Hollow. 6 of your 11 par 4s measure to this length on the scorecard. It's just going to be a pretty big factor. So 10% in this length of par 4s and 10% in par 5s. You have to play the par 5s well here at Quail Hollow. Those are really your best scoring chances other than the 2 short par 4s. So there's a look at the mixed condition model that I've made for the Wells Fargo this week. And hopefully I have given you some information on where kind of my bias is or where my weaknesses will be or that I could see by Sunday. Again, if it's Poa Trivialis, if I need a little bit more around the green, if par 3s matter a little bit. But that is what I have for you all in terms of a mixed condition model for this week. So let's go ahead and move on over to Microsoft Excel and the reveal of my rankings. For the 2023 Wells Fargo, my top 10 goes as such. Rory McIlroy, number 1, probably no real surprise there. Victor Hovland, number 2, again, probably no real surprise. Justin Thomas, 3rd. Matt Wallace, 4th. Xander, Tony Finau, Emiliano Grillo, Jason Day, Ricky Fowler, and Terrell Hatton. So the big shock for me was to see Matt Wallace 4th in my rankings. He is certainly getting helped by the fact that he has played this event only one time and he played it very well. He tied for 6th, so this course value is very low, small sample size, but that is really catapulting him up in the rankings, as well as the fact that he is projected to be very, very unique at 2.5%. But if you look at some of his metrics, they're very, very strong. especially for somebody at 7,000 even. Top 25 in this field in strokes gained approach in the 2023 calendar year. He's been hitting his irons very well. He's top 20 in avoiding bogeys when it's difficult in the past 2+ years. Now, where the weakness for Matt Wallace is coming, he is not very good off the tee, and off the tee is such a big deal here at Quail Hollow. It's surprising to me to see him so poor at off the tee, yet still 4th in my rankings. He's definitely going to have to clean up his off the tee game if he wants to compete, and he's not particularly adept at the long par 4s. But again, with being top 25 in irons, top 20 in bogey avoidance, you see the greens, they're solid as well. Almost top 25 in par 5 scoring. Now, the Corrales is nowhere near as difficult as Quail Hollow. That's fairly obvious statement. But the Corrales is a very long course, and he won that tournament, so he can compete on long courses. He just has to be quite a bit more accurate with his tee ball this week. So Matt Wallace, somebody that I'm pretty intrigued by in terms of DFS. Other than that, probably not a whole lot of surprise here. Terrell Hatton always plays difficult courses well. Ricky has played Quail Hollow very, very well. Jason Day is a former champion at Quail Hollow. Emiliano Grillo's played Quail Hollow very, very well. Evening, Pete. Thanks for jumping in chat. Hopefully you are ready for the 2023 Wells Fargo. Just missed my mixed condition model and started talking about my top 10. Really, the one surprise is Matt Wallace. But thanks for jumping into chat like you always do when you are able to catch the show live. Who are you looking at this week? Have you made any wagers? Are there any players that you're pivoting to or staying away from? All that good stuff. But there's a look at my top 10 for this week. Let's go ahead and sort on the price board and run through that and see where we can find some values and perhaps where we want to deviate from the chalk. So, in the 10Ks this week, we have 4 players: Rory, Xander Schauffele, Patrick Cantlay, and Tony Finau. You see, all 4 are basically inside my top 20, including Patrick Cantlay, who was the number 1 player, at least purely by the analytics, at Fantasy National. But he's only played this course once, so the small sample size disclaimer is equal to Patrick Cantlay that it is to Matt Wallace. Matt Wallace has played this event once. It was very good. Patrick Cantlay played this course once. It was very good. Patrick Cantlay's only played this course once. It was very bad. But Cantlay is the number 1 player analytically, but all things considered, when you bring in course value, projected ownership, and all that, Rory, the number 1 player in my rankings, probably no surprise at 11-1. I mean, he's the top driving distance player on long courses, top 5 in 2 of the 3 metrics that I use the difficult to par filter. The number 1 strokes gained total player here at Quail Hollow since 2018. I mean, what's there to say? It's Rory. He really likes Quail Hollow. Xander also getting a little bit of love for good reason. He's not played this course as well, but he is 2nd in irons, top 10 in the big metrics that I used, difficult to par, being bogeys avoided and greens gained. Tony Finau generally likes Quail Hollow as well. So in the 10Ks, look, he's going to be pretty darn chalky and he's going to be very, very expensive. But I don't see any way you can not make Rory number 1 in the 10Ks. The guy just lives for Quail Hollow. It is seemingly built for Rory McIlroy. So I'm going to make Rory the number one player in my 10Ks. I'm going to have a decent amount of Rory in my lineups. That is chalk that I'm willing to eat, and I am pretty confident that I will find some uniqueness elsewhere. So Rory's number one for me in the 10Ks. Second, I actually might go Tony Finau. Look, he's the number one iron player in this field. He's very good when it's difficult. He clearly has the length for Quail Hollow. He hasn't played it spectacularly, but neither of the other two either. So I think I'm going to go Tony Finau second in the 10Ks, Xander third, and Patrick Cantlay fourth. I'm a pretty big believer this week, and if you saw the research early this week over on social media that I posted, how prior course success is pretty darn important at Quail Hollow, especially recent form at Quail Hollow. Now, the last time Quail Hollow held the Wells Fargo was 2021. Last year, Quail Hollow was being prepped for the President's Cup, but you really do need to play Quail Hollow and play it well before you understand it. So I'm a little concerned with Patrick Cantlay in that regard, considering he didn't play it well his one time through. It doesn't prevent him from playing well this week, especially since he's played it. But I am much more shy or much more cautious on Cantlay than I am of the other two. So for me, Rory's a pretty clear number one in the 10Ks. I'll go Tony Finau second and Xander third. I won't argue too terribly much if you flip those two, but I think they're a pretty clear second and third, and Cantlay I think is a pretty clear fourth in the 10Ks. Moving to the nines, we have Colin Morikawa, Jordan Spieth, Max Homa, Matt Fitzpatrick, Victor Hovland, Sung Jae, and Jason Day. In the 9Ks, you have two players that have had success at Quail Hollow. Victor Hovland, again, just like Matt Wallace, he's only played Quail Hollow once, but it was a T3. So that course value is very, very low. It's very, very good. And he is the most projected on player, so he's not going to be unique at all. But everything seems to line up for Victor Hovland this week. Top 10 in approach, top 10 in off the tee. It's just off your screen. He's 7th in strokes gained off the tee. He's 5th he's 4th, top 5 in par 4s, 450 to 5. There's a lot to like with Victor Hovland. I will have quite a bit of Victor Hovland in my wagering card when I post that to social media later tonight. So even though they are I think the two most chalky plays. No, Cameron Young is second. So Victor Hovland's your most projected on player. Rory's your third most projected on player. I'm not going to be able to get away from them. And like I said, I think I am pretty confident that I can find some uniqueness elsewhere. So that's chalk I will absolutely eat. Jason Day, your champion in 2018 at the Wells Fargo when it was held at Quail Hollow. A lot to like as well. Very adept at avoiding bogeys when it's difficult. Now, the putter has not cooperated, and he's also been battling some vertigo. There was an article or a mention somewhere on the internets that he was dealing with vertigo the last round of the Masters. So that gives you a pretty decent reason to be very cautious or to avoid Jason Day. I was already a little bit skeptical of Jason Day coming into this, and now seeing that gives me pretty clear reasons to fade Jason Day. It's a little dangerous game because he's played Quail Hollow well, but I do not like the putter, and I do not like how he's not taking advantage of par 5s. So Jason Day is going to be close to a full fade for me. I might have him once or twice just to have that coverage of him, but I'm not going to be using Jason Day a lot. Elsewhere in the 9Ks, somebody else I'm a little skeptical about is Max Homa. look, you see the course value. He won here in 2019, but 2021 was really bad. He was pretty darn bad. And when he won the Wells Fargo in 2019, he gained 10 strokes on the green. You just can't count on that. You see the putter on Fast Bermuda is okay, but it's, you know, nothing to the effect of that you would think he was going to gain even half of the amount that he gained when he won. So I'm a little bit more skeptical on Max Homa, and seeing the high level of ownership gives me another good reason that I can fade Max Homa. Spieth's getting a lot of love. Okay, he hadn't played Quail Hollow in the past 5 years. Morikawa, I think, should be really good. I mean, you see he's number one in both bogeys avoided and greens gained when it's difficult, but he's not played Quail Hollow. And again, if I'm going to suggest that a player needs to have at least had a modicum of success at Quail Hollow, then that would give me a lot of reason to pause on Colin Morikawa. You're playing Colin Morikawa due to the fact this is basically a major championship style course. It's very long, it's very difficult, but Morikawa's never played here. Sungjae has not fared well here either in his tries at Quail Hollow. He's always very good at difficult courses, difficult rounds. He's also the number one player on par 5 scoring in this field. But I mean, you see here 105th in driving distance. Sungjae doesn't have a lot of length, and you need some length at Quail Hollow. So I'm a little bit off on Sungjae as well. So that tells you if I'm using a lot of Rory, if I'm using Victor Hovland, but really avoiding the rest of the 9Ks, that tells you kind of where I'm going in the price board, especially since I am using the two chalky players. Now, I think Colin Morikawa should be good here. Perhaps not win, especially since he hasn't played here, at least in the last 5 years, but everything analytically says Colin Morikawa should be good here. I think Fitzpatrick should be pretty good here. Now, the irons haven't been very good, but he is one of the top 10 putters on fast Bermuda greens. So I think Fitzpatrick should be good. So if I'm willing to if I need to deviate from Victor Hovland, if I'm willing to take a chance, I'll go to Morikawa. I don't mind using a little bit of Fitzpatrick, but really, I'm kind of out on the 9Ks this week. So Hovland's my clear number one in the 9Ks. I'll make Morikawa second in the 9Ks. I'll probably make Fitzpatrick third, although I think he's a pretty clear distance behind Morikawa for that second spot. Spieth's probably fine, but again, he's very, very chalky. I'm quite concerned about Homa and his poor performances, except for his win at Quail Hollow. Sungjae has never played well here, and I'm worried about Jason Day's health. So kind of avoiding the 9Ks. In the 8s, we have Justin Thomas, Ricky Fowler, Cameron Young, Sam Burns, Terrell Hatton, Tom Kim, Sahith Theegala, Shane Lowry, Tommy Fleetwood, and Brian Harman. For as much as I've talked about needing length this week, Brian Harman and one other player we'll get to are kind of the exceptions. Brian Harman's played pretty darn well here at Quail Hollow. The issue is he has not hit his irons very well this calendar year at all. And he's generally a better iron player than what he's been in 2023, so that gives me a lot of reason to be very cautious on Brian Harman. Look, he avoids bogeys. He's a grinder. His off-the-tee metrics are always going to be fairway-based. He's a very good putter on Bermuda, but he's generally, or when he has played well at Quail Hollow, he has been in much better form with his irons than what he is coming to Quail Hollow this year in terms of iron form. So I am not going to be using Brian Harman. I'm not going to get caught up on his previous success here. Elsewhere in the 8Ks, I mean, Justin Thomas is going to be very chalky, probably for good reason. He has played well here. Top 20 in irons. The irons seem to be coming back to Justin Thomas-like levels. Always going to be very good at avoiding bogeys. It's a question with the putter, like a lot of other players, like Tony Finau, Cameron Young, Morikawa, all these players. It comes down to if you're going to have a hot putting week, and Justin Thomas certainly can putt his way to a win. Very good at long par fours, taking advantage of par fives. I like Justin Thomas quite a bit too. He's not going to be very unique in the eights. Ricky Fowler, I think will be okay. A lot of ownership on him because he has played Quail Hollow and he's played it well. The irons, I mean, he's top 5 in this field in irons this calendar year. He doesn't have a bad statistic. None of these statistics are pink or red. They're all at least field average or better. Irons clearly being his best, which is what you want here at Quail Hollow. That's a lot of ownership to eat on Ricky. I can see it. I can take it or leave it. I think it's a lot of ownership, but I think he should be pretty good here. Cameron Young, that is a lot of ownership on him. And just like if I'm going to be cautious with Morikawa, with Fitzpatrick, kind of have to be cautious with Cameron Young because he's never played here. Now, again, analytically, things say it should be pretty good. He's top 30 in irons. He's elite off the tee. Clearly has the distance to compete at Quail Hollow. But he's not been great on these long par fours. He's been good, but not elite at scrambling when it's difficult. So, it's a lot of ownership. If you want reasons to avoid Cameron Young or to be unique, you have plenty. The putter, he really doesn't hit a lot of greens either when it's difficult. But I mean, I think he's going to be pretty good. You just won't be able to use him with a Justin Thomas, with a Victor Hovland, with a Rory. I think that'll be too chalky. I think Cameron Young's a bit of a fade for me only because of the level of ownership. Instead, where I'm going in the 8Ks, I've been gravitating towards Sam Burns. Look, the irons haven't been there, but he's been playing better as of late. And he's the number 1 putter on Fast Bermuda Burns. He's also good on Poa Trivialis as well, as you saw his win at Match Play, his strong performance at Scottsdale. He likes Poa Trivialis as well, because generally that's base Bermuda. But he's the number 1 putter on Fast Bermuda. He obviously has the distance to compete here. He's top 15 in that. He scrambles well, a lot of that due with the putter. I've been gravitating towards Sam Burns in the 8s, especially if I'm trying to get away from Cameron Young, if I want a little bit of differentiation from Justin Thomas, all that kind of stuff. Terrell Hatton should be good. I mean, 11% is completely fair. He plays difficult courses and difficult rounds well. His off-the-tee metric is generally going to be fairway-based, but you see on long courses, he's actually 21st in driving distance. So he has the length to compete. He takes advantage of par fives. I think Terrell Hatton's going to be pretty darn good this week. A lot of people seem to like Tom Kim. Members of Fantasy National don't. I'm off of Tom Kim this week. I don't like this course fit for him. A lot of members of Fantasy National seem to be going with Tagala as well. A little bit more shy on Tagala. I can understand it, but I'm a little bit more shy on that. Talked about Harman. Fleetwood, kind of like Terrell Hatton, just should be fine. 11% is fair. He has not played as well at Quail Hollow, but I think he should be okay. Lowry, not getting a lot of love. Kind of don't know where his game is. He's not very good on Bermuda either, so you got reasons to want to avoid. But 5.5% ownership on a player of Shane Lowry's caliber is kind of appealing. I don't know if I'll end up going to Shane Lowry, but 5.5% is pretty appealing. So there's a look at the 8Ks. Been, like I said, going to JT. It's a pretty obvious play, but should be pretty good. Ricky's fine. It's a lot of ownership, but I think he'll be fine. I've been gravitating towards Sam Burns, Terrell Hatton. A little bit less with Tommy, but should be okay. Moving into the upper sevens, a couple players that I really want to point out. Keith Mitchell. He's getting a lot of love. Probably for good reason. He has played Quail Hollow very, very well. The more difficult it is, the better Keith Mitchell is. Even though the numbers here aren't showing that, he's very good when it's difficult. 4th off the tee in 2023. I think he's a better long course player than what these metrics are showing. And we've seen that he likes Quail Hollow. So give Keith Mitchell a pretty long look. Gary Woodland should be interesting as well, although he's getting a lot of love as well. Anytime it's long, anytime it's difficult, Gary Woodland generally plays well. You see 4 very, very good statistics here. And he's 4th in driving distance on long courses. So Gary Woodland should be okay, but he's had his fair amount of struggles at Quail Hollow, so take that how you will. And someone else that I want to potentially point in your direction is Chris Kirk. He's not played Quail Hollow in the past 5 years. He's got solid, not spectacular, but solid statistics all the way around except for driving distance. So he's really going to have to rely on his putter. He's going to have to rely on hitting the fairways. But he is the number 1 par 4 player. So those 2 short par 4s he should be able to take advantage of. He's a good scrambler. I think he has enough to offset the lack of distance. I think Chris Kirk is going to be pretty good for you, especially if he is indeed sub 5%. Moving to the low sevens. 2 players I want to really, really gravitate your attention to. The top 2 players here, Grillo and Hadwin. Grillo, 7th in my rankings. The irons are there. He's a good ball striker. He generally hits greens when it's difficult. Good enough off the tee to compete. It's always going to be about the putter. Gosh dang it, where'd it go? There. It's always going to be about the putter with Grillo. He has to be better at par 5s, no doubt about that, for sure. But he has the distance. He's good at long par 4s. I think Grillo should be good, and you see this course value. He has played Quail Hollow very, very well the past 3 times, or the past 3 editions. And then one of the players that I was referring to in terms of the putter, Adam Hadwin, is very, very high in my rankings. He's played Quail Hollow fairly well. I think it's just once. Look, the irons aren't great, but top 30 in fast Bermuda putting, top 30 in scrambling. If this is Poa Trivialis, he's even better on Poa Trivialis. And he generally plays difficult courses well. So Adam Hadwin is somebody that I'm going to be pretty overexposed to, especially with the projected lack of ownership. So Adam Hadwin is somebody that I will lose to if he plays poorly. I'm going to kind of plant my flag on Adam Hadwin based on the putter and believing in his difficult metrics. Elsewhere in the lower sevens, not really a whole lot going on here except for maybe Sam Stevens down at 7,000, who's getting a lot of attention. Brendan Todd, he's only played it once. It's all about the putter with him. Webb Simpson has played this event very, very well, but he's not the same player. I still don't think he is fully healthy. You see the off the tee, not good at all. Not taking advantage of the long par fours. Doesn't have the distance. I'm not anywhere near Webb Simpson this week, even though he has played this course well. Let's see. JT Poston, for as much as the analytics like him, I don't see it. He generally plays shorter courses well, and he prefers easier tests or easier courses. See his win at the John Deere last year. Now he is pretty good at avoiding bogeys, but he doesn't hit a lot of greens when it's difficult. He doesn't scramble well when it's difficult. I'm just not there with JT Poston. Instead, if I'm coming down into the low sevens, Ben Martin's in very good form. He hadn't played Quail Hollow, so keep that in mind. But he has, he's in great form. Seamus Power has played well here, although kind of like JT Poston, I see Seamus Power more in terms of a short course and easy course player. Talked about Matt Wallace in the reveal of my top 10. I'll use Matt Wallace. Kind of like Adam Hadwin. Matt Wallace and Adam Hadwin are the two players that I will lose if they play poorly. I'm a believer in the difficulty here. And Matt Wallace generally plays difficult courses well. Sam Stevens, just be aware he's not going to be unique. He's getting a lot of love, at least with the members at Fantasy National. The irons are good. The off the tee game has been pretty good. Oh shoot, where'd he go? He's been pretty good off the tee, which is what you need at Quail Hollow. But in his short time on the PGA Tour, he has shown that he does not like Bermuda. Takes advantage of par 5s, so a little good, a little bad, but 11% on Sam Stevens is a little bit too much for me. So instead, I will gravitate to, like I said, players like Matt Wallace and Adam Hadwin. Maybe even Nick Hardy, although I'm not terribly confident in it. But I'm kind of ignoring the low 7s as well. So if I'm ignoring the 9s and ignoring the low 7s, that kind of tells you the types of lineups that I've been building this week. Lastly, in the 6Ks, look, generally I try to give you a couple of odd names to think about. I don't like much in the 6Ks this week. I really don't. I'm going to give you a couple of names, but even then, I'm not really all that excited about them. The first name I'll give you is Luke List. Yes, he is top 20 in my rankings, and it's all based on the ball striking. Look, he's been a little bit better with his irons lately. He is the number 1 off the tee player in this field, but the putter is god awful. It is just atrocious. He's not been taking advantage of par 5s either. Just off your screen. He's not been taking advantage of par 5s either. So any belief in Luke List is all around the ball striking and the distance. I'll probably have Luke List a time or two, but like I said, I don't love it. Joseph Bramlett, a lot of the same reasoning, and he's shown that he does not like Quail Hollow, or at least the one time he played, he does not like Quail Hollow. His is all in the distance and the ball striking as well. Both of those plays, I think, are logically fine. I would tend to go with Luke List just because he has shown he can play well at Quail Hollow, but I'm not in love with either of them. The last name that I want to give you in the 6Ks is Sepp Straka. So I'm not going really too much lower than 6,900. You've got a couple other names down here that you might be able to gravitate towards if you want to focus on a certain narrative. And Sepp Straka has a lot wrong with him in terms of very poor statistics. I mean, the bogey avoidance, I mean, generally just when it's difficult at all. But he won the Honda, which is always difficult. His irons have been very, very good. And this is Bermuda. He putts Bermuda very, very well. Again, see his win and his top 5 earlier this year at the Honda. So I think Sepp Straka could be interesting if you're gravitating to a Stars and Scrubs, if you want to really reach for somebody that's going to be very unique. I don't hate the idea of Sepp Straka. Not in love with it, but if you're really needing some uniqueness, I like going with Sepp Straka there based on the putter. But that's what I have for you in terms of looking at the price board and how I see it shaping out. Let's start making some lineups here. We'll start with tiers. And in tier 1, we have Rory, Xander Schauffele, and Patrick Cantlay. To me, there's a pretty clear tier list in tier 1. Rory is pretty clearly the elite in tier 1. I think Xander's middle of the road, and I think Patrick Cantlay is third of the 3 in tier 1. If you want to try to be unique, or if you know you're going to use some chalk later, I don't hate the idea of Xander, but I think the best play is Rory. So give me Rory in tier 1. Tier 2, Tony Finau, Colin Morikawa, Jordan Spieth, Max Homa, and Victor Hovland. Well, as I mentioned, I think Rory's going to be pretty darn chalky in tier 1. I expect Victor Hovland to be very chalky in tier 2, but I think he's the best play. If you're going Rory and Hovland, you're going to have to take a whole lot of chances and really try to find a lot of uniqueness elsewhere in tiers 3, 4, 5, and 6. Again, I think Hovland is the best play in tier 2. Morikawa is certainly very interesting. So if you're not afraid of 2 chalky picks, go Rory and Hovland. Otherwise, I would do something like Xander Hovland or Rory Morikawa. But I think the 2 best plays are Rory and Hovland. So that's where I'll go in tiers 1 and 2, trying to find some uniqueness. But I imagine that's going to be too chalky, just like with classic lineups. Tier 3, Matt Fitzpatrick, Sung Jae, Jason Day, Justin Thomas, and Cameron Young. Surprisingly, I bet Cameron Young's going to be the chalky option in tier 3. I don't like Sung Jae. I don't like Jason Day again for the health. So it's kind of between Fitzpatrick and Justin Thomas kind of by default. I'll go Justin Thomas, but you're already setting up for, tier 1, 2, and 3 being pretty darn chalky. But give me Justin Thomas in tier 3. It's either him or Matt Fitzpatrick, because I think Cameron Young's going to be way too chalky. Tier 4, Ricky Fowler, Sam Burns, Tyrrell Hatton, Tom Kim, Sahith Theegala, Shane Lowry, and Brian Harman. If you're a big believer in course form or prior course performance, go Brian Harman, although I've given you a reason why you should probably reconsider that, considering his irons aren't very good right now. I like Sam Burns quite a bit. I like Tyrrell Hatton quite a bit. I think Sam Burns is the more volatile option. I think he has the higher upside, but he definitely has the lower floor. So if you want the consistent pick, give me Tyrrell Hatton. If you want the upside play, then give me Sam Burns. It depends on how you want to build your lineup. So in tier 4, I'm going to take the consistent play in Tyrrell Hatton because I've been so chalky with Rory, Hovland, and JT. I'm really going to have to reach in tier 5 and tier 6. So I feel like I want the consistency of Tyrrell Hatton, but I like Sam Burns just as much. It depends on what kind of lineup you have so far. Tier 5, Tommy Fleetwood, Corey Connors, Matt Kuchar, Wyndham Clark, Keith Mitchell, Keegan Bradley, and Siwoo Kim. I really like Keith Mitchell. I think Corey Connors should be fine as well. Tommy's okay. But give me Keith Mitchell. I just think he's probably the best choice in tier 5. Finally, tier 6, we have Ben Martin, Justin Suh, Matt Wallace, Andrew Putnam, S.H. Kim, Ben Griffin, and Akshay Bhatia. I'll go Matt Wallace, going purely by my rankings. He is an all or nothing type play, but give me Matt Wallace. I don't like Putnam at all for this. Ben Martin probably will play fine, but he'll probably be the most chalky in tier 6. Bhatia, probably fine. I imagine he'll be more highly owned in tiers contests. Don't really like this course setup for S.H. Kim or Ben Griffin, so for me it's between Matt Wallace and Bhatia and Martin. But I'll go Matt Wallace, trying to hit a home run, thinking that I've been very, very, very chalky in 3 or so of the tiers. There's a look at the tiers contest. Let's start building some classic lineups and seeing how we can maneuver around what we expect our fellow contestants to be building. So the first question that you have to ask yourself, do you think your fellow contestants are using Rory? If not, then it looks like they're going to be doing something to the effect of a balanced lineup, going maybe Spieth, Hovland, Cameron Young. And it's a little bit more stars and scrubs than, or it's a different way of building stars and scrubs. Sorry, there we go. You see, the fellow contestants still have 7,500 left per player because they're not threatening to go into the 10Ks, but they've got a whole lot of chalk in here. Let's see, some of these other players that are getting some love. Probably Tommy at 8. Gary Woodland at 76. 6,900. Shucks. So Sam Stevens is where your fellow contestants are bottoming out. So maybe instead of Tommy Fleetwood at 8,000, it's Keith Mitchell. So there's a look at what appears to be a pretty chalky, balanced looking lineup. 16% projected match in your GPPs. Huge amount of ownership here. Huge amount of ownership. And of course, move things around as you see. Maybe it's Homa, but definitely Victor Hovland. He's getting a lot of love. So Hovland and Young are the 2 top projected owned players. Nobody other than Sam Stevens is getting a whole lot of love in the low 7s. He's at 11.5%. The next person looks to be about 7.5. Hayden Buckley, 7.2, and Ben Martin. So it's really Sam Stevens or nothing in the low 7s with our fellow contestants, and really not a lot in the 6Ks either. Joseph Bramlett at 7 and some change. Luke List at 6.5, but really it's Sam Stevens or nothing in the bottom part of the price board. So there's a look at a pretty darn chalky balanced lineup. If our fellow contestants are going Rory and still bottoming out at Sam Stevens, they're going to have to be a bit more economical with their pricing. So Emiliano Grillo would probably fit into this. It's still Gary Woodland. He's at 16% or 14%, excuse me. This leaves them 8,500 per. If you think they're trying to fit a Victor with this, leaves 77, which is Keegan getting some love. But instead, I'm going to try to show a couple of 8s maybe. So we'll go Justin Thomas, and 8,000 even as Tommy. A little bit less in terms of projected ownership, but still everybody above 11% or right at it, matching at 13.5%. Still very, very common looking lineup that is being built for the Wells Fargo this week. So if we're going to try to move around that, I've mentioned that I'm going to be using Rory, but I don't mind Xander at all. I think Xander is going to be just fine. this week. I gave you a few names or a couple of names in the 6Ks. I don't really like it. So instead, again, I'm just going to be going with the long course narrative. He generally plays difficult courses well. Also, give me Matt Wallace. Give me Matt Wallace, and I'll take that chance. He won the Corrales, which is on the long course. It's certainly not as difficult as Quail Hollow, but you're getting a whole lot of uniqueness here with Matt Wallace, and that frees up a whole lot in the middle here that we can move around. You can probably take Victor if you are so inclined. I'm just going to try to optimize this for uniqueness, so I'll go Colin Morikawa. I think Colin Morikawa should be pretty good this week. His performances in majors speak for themselves. This is a major championship style course. I think Morikawa plays pretty well. Sam Burns or Terrell Hatton, either one. I'll go Sam Burns here. Looks like that's probably going to be a little bit too expensive, unfortunately. Let's move into the 7s then, which really stinks because I was hoping I could have fit Burns or Hatton in that, but it does not look like I'd be able to. Look, Keith Mitchell I think is going to be really, really good. He's a bit more chalky. We can try to fit him in, but I imagine he's going to be a bit too chalky. Chris Kirk at 7,500 should be pretty good. Adam Hadwin, again, based on the putter, based on the fact that he plays difficult courses pretty darn well. I will use Chris Kirk. That gives me 7,200. And not a lot down here that I like. You can use Webb Simpson if you're a believer in the prior course performance, but I just don't want any part of Webb Simpson and his lack of form. We've already used Matt Wallace. You can, throw in Ben Martin. He's going to be pretty chalky for the area, but Ben Martin's in great form. That's a 9% projected owned lineup, thanks to Chris Kirk and Matt Wallace. You're throwing out Xander and Colin Morikawa, Keith Mitchell, who plays difficult courses well. This is a lineup that I would be absolutely comfortable submitting in a GPP. But where I've been going, generally speaking, I told you I've been ignoring a lot of the 9s and I've been ignoring a lot of the lower 7s. Well, that tells you the kind of lineups I've been building. I've been trying to maneuver around the chalky balanced lineups, starting with Victor. You can also start Fitzpatrick, Morikawa. I'm just going to start Victor and go ahead and calculate my chalk into this. I've been going Victor, Sam Burns, Terrell Hatton, and you see I'm still at 7,900 per player. Corey Connor, somebody we haven't given a lot of attention to tonight, I think should be pretty good. He's 11th overall, 19th analytically, top 15 in irons. He's number 2 in greens when it's difficult. I think Corey Connor should be fine. He's getting a little bit of love at 8.5%, but nothing that should scare you away. I will bottom this team out at Adam Hadwin. That leaves me 8,400 if you like Tom Kim. I particularly don't, but let's see, Keith Mitchell, Gary Woodland. We'll throw in Gary Woodland. He's one of the more chalky players in this range. We're leaving quite a bit of money on the table. We're still at 11%. Not the best, but again, you're using Hovland. You're using Woodland, who, if you come off of Woodland, that could very easily come down in projected ownership. This is the kind of lineups that I've been building as I try to navigate this DFS slate this week. Barring something unforeseen, I believe the Friday night chill stream will come back this Friday. We should have the second round completed for the Wells Fargo, so we can do some round 3 and weekend golf content. I can also show you what I've been looking at for baseball and what I do in terms of what I look at daily for baseball. So I will keep my social media updated if something changes, but I believe there should be a Friday night chill stream this Friday night, so I'm looking forward to getting back into that. So P, thanks for jumping into chat. Always appreciated. And thanks to everyone else out there who tunes in, watches, listens, supports the channel by liking the videos, commenting, subscribing. It's always appreciated. Again, reminder, I will be live, barring something unforeseen, Friday evening for the Friday night chill stream, looking at some round 3 showdown, weekend golf, maybe a little bit of baseball. But let me know on social media or in the comments how you do this week for the Wells Fargo. Would love to be able to shout out members of the community that have success, and we'll do so next Sunday for the initial research next week. So thanks again, always appreciated for all of the wagers you have made this week for the Wells Fargo, for all of the DFS contests you've entered this week for the Wells Fargo, for this weekend and every weekend. May all your bets be profitable.